Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and today I'm excited to have Elizabeth Jetton on the show today. Elizabeth is one of the founders of Life Planning and has spent her entire career in various parts of the industry. She's been in broker-dealers, regional RIAs, started an RIA, merged with another RIA, taught college courses in financial life planning, and more. She is now a business coach for advisors and said her goal is to work on the profession, not in the profession any longer. We covered a lot of ground in this interview, starting with trying to answer the question, what is financial life planning and how is it different from financial therapy or financial planning in general? We also dug into the work that she does with advisors and the struggles she helps her advisors work through. Primarily, it's about discovering your why so you can be authentic. If you're interested in hearing what real financial planning can truly be, you're going to love this episode. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/124. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. That's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Elizabeth. Hey, Elizabeth, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
It is an honor, Alan. Great to be here.
Yeah, so I guess you mentioned in the pre-call that you're in grad school. So are you going to be Dr. Jetton here soon?
Well, definitely not soon.
Okay.
Right? I am actually. I'm starting with a master's program, and then I'll probably transition if I can stand it. It's a master's in education at University of Georgia in adult learning.
Go Dogs.
Yeah. Oh, well, don't tell my husband that. Adult. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation we'll have to have privately. But anyway, it's in adult learning, leadership, and organizational development. And quickly, I'm taking that on because it's really it applies so deeply to what we do as financial planners. I believe financial planning is a learning profession, as well as a learned profession. And so that's really why I'm doing it. I want to apply a lot of these theories into the work of financial planning. So that's what's happening with that.
I love it. Well, we'll have to have you back on when we can call you doctor. It's a habit from going to grad school. I cannot get away from calling PhDs doctor. So I still have, Dr. Getz and Dr. Palmer and all the guys there at Georgia. And, they're always like, it's Joe and Lance. I'm like, no. It'll never be Joe and Lance.
I am going to let you call me doctor if I get to that point, because that will be a massive achievement on my part at this point in my life. So.
Very true. So give listeners just sort of an overview of where your career is at today. And we're going to talk about all the ebbs and flows, because I think from what I know about it, you've done a lot of really cool stuff. So sort of where is your focus today in addition to grad school?
Sure. Yes, when you live long enough, your path is windy and long and lots to talk about. But these days, I have a coaching practice focused on financial planners and financial planning firms. And I am also an adjunct professor at California Lutheran and at Golden Gate. And the one at Golden Gate is sort of interesting at the moment in that with Dr. Dave Yeski's leadership, they've created a new concentration in financial life planning in their advanced planning program. So for people that already have their CFP, they have a graduate program. And they are the first in the country to actually offer a concentration in financial life planning. And I am designing and teaching the survey course. And it's very cool, a lot of work, but really, really awesome to finally sort of see this material getting into academia. So that's what I'm up to.
That's awesome. What is a survey course? Sort of what is the focus of that?
So it would be the first course they would take in the series that introduces a lot of the concepts and themes. And we used Dick Wagner's book, Financial Planning 3.0, for the first month of the course. So they'll get an introduction through guest lectures to a lot of the theories and ideas. We'll have George Kinder and Carol Anderson and Amy Mullen and a whole bunch of other people. I'll lead some sessions. Dave and Elisa will lead some sessions. And so it's really sort of giving them the 30,000 foot level of the lay of the land. And then they'll go into sort of deeper courses that really focus on a particular element after that. So it's the fun course, in my opinion. Right.
Oh yeah, I'm super jealous. So how would you define the difference between like financial life planning and some of what Georgia, but primarily Kansas State, are working on with sort of their financial therapy program? Are they just the same thing with different names, or do they have different focuses in your mind?
So now you're getting into what I'll do in my PhD, and this is a really big topic. So let me try to, I have a lot of feelings and thoughts on this. I don't think they're the same thing. And I think one of the issues that Dick brought up in his book and that is really on my mind is that financial planning, we don't have a lot of theory yet.
Correct, like academic theory.
Yeah, right. We have a lot of ideas. We have people who've created really cool processes and they've monetized them and built businesses around them, and that's just fine. We have this specialty called financial therapy, and I think there are a whole host of other theories, including adult learning and some others, that also can inform what we do. And so I actually am not sure we have the right language yet. I don't love financial life planning as the name of the big bucket on which a lot of these things fall into, but we'll see. I kind of liked phenology as sort of the bigger container, and within that is the study of an individual's relationship with money, and that financial planning is the practical application of that. That kind of works for me, but I do think we need to have more conversation and sort of writing about this idea. So I tend to think financial therapy is a specialist, a special focus and theoretical framework that is related to what we seem to mean when we talk about financial life planning, but it isn't the same. That's the short answer.
Yeah, I would love to geek out over the theories, because this is, whenever you start talking about theoretical framework, that brings up more than a few flashbacks from grad school. But most listeners don't care what that means. But it does. Theoretical frameworks are important because it is the lens through which we view the world. And what you don't, I think, until you begin to really study various frameworks, you don't realize that you always approach a situation through a lens, and theoretical frameworks give us a foundation through which to build build the academic side of financial planning, which we have never had, which is really interesting. So yeah, and like I said, it has been very interesting to me to watch the language, particularly in the financial therapy world, just because that is sort of the world I grew up in, and recently saw a presentation from Dr. Archuleta and Dr. Palmer and Dr. Getz on this, and that it is growing up and it is becoming more easier to define and have conversations. It used to be this like super mushy thing that we just could not use any language around, and we just didn't know how to talk about it. It's getting better. It's very far from complete. But I guess, how do you define life planning? Because I've always struggled with this in that I've always felt like life planning, and what we meant by that was just real financial planning. It's just the term financial planning got stolen by people that weren't actually doing financial planning, so we felt the need to differentiate it. Is that sort of the way you look at it, or do you think it's a step deeper than what we mean when we say financial planning?
Oh, yeah. So I think there's sort of this continuum. And on one end, and I think this is sort of how Dave Yeski approached it in his work, on one end is kind of your traditional focus on the subsets, what we would call the subsets that we learn in the CFP curriculum, right? That is one end of that spectrum. And then at the other end is maybe financial. I wouldn't even say at the other end is financial therapy, but is spending more time addressing the qualitative aspect of money, the humanistic side of money, one's history, relationship, values, sort of what is guiding our behaviors and our decisions. And so, yes, I think really good financial planning has to incorporate that in some way. And the jury is still out as to, what that looks like. One of the things that we're trying to do in this course, and that I'm doing with my coaching clients, is really to say, financial life planning, what it is not is adding a discovery meeting.
I like that.
It is something that needs to be woven throughout the entire relationship. It has a philosophical basis that you bring to your practice, and it is not a meeting. It is not one conversation. It's a way of showing up and approaching the entire engagement with a client, and we need to be able to see it throughout the 6-step process. So that's one thing I would say about it.
I love that framing, because I feel like as financial planners, we bring something that is the core of the planning relation, or just the overall relationship with the clients. And it may be investments for some advisors, it's insurance for other advisors, it's what we call comprehensive financial planning for some advisors, and it's the thing that when you don't have anything else to talk about, it's the thing you talk about. So investment advisors, when they're not sure, they sort of run out of estate planning questions and retirement plus planning questions, they fall back on the investments. And I feel like financial life planners fall back on just the client's life and what they're trying to accomplish. I always say, like, what is their great life? How do they define their great life? And then, how do you use money as a tool to accomplish that great life? And I feel like that's the difference, is sort of what's the core of the relationship. And I don't know if that's a fair way of defining it, but I feel like it's the fallback, and whatever you fall back to where you're comfortable is what you're going to bring as the core at every meeting and every engagement with a client.
Well, there's probably truth to that, because we're human and we have the place that we go, which is why I guess you could say it, not just in my coaching, but in the whole second half of my career, my focus has really been on very intentional practice of financial planning from the first meeting through ongoing care, because we can't relax. There is always something important to be talked about. The client is always in transition. The client is always in motion. And so as their advocate, we have to, I've always said, sort of have one foot in the present with our client and one foot in their future. And that has to happen all the time. That's not a one-time conversation. And so that's sort of my very intentional focus, is sort of not just hanging out in theory, but what does that look like in the practice of planning? What does it look like in the 20th meeting you have with a client? What does it look like in the investment meeting with the client, right? And I don't think financial life planning is just about, this is when it was one of Dick's issues. It's not, this is why I don't really like the term, but we'll just live with it until we come up with something better. It isn't just about how do you, what makes you happy and what's your grand vision for your life. It's, it's the shadow of money. It is about all four quadrants of the integral model, and we don't need to get into that, so I'm sorry I'm leaping all over the place. But it is about how did you grow up? What was the culture? What are the influences? What are the voices you bring in with you into every meeting that are influencing your decisions around money? What are the biases you as the planner are bringing to this meeting and your filters? And so it's not just about a happy life. It is very often, it's I think approaching the entire process from a different container. We're entering a different, to me, it is a sacred field. It's a sacred space, which doesn't mean it's a religious space, but we need to understand, I think, that the depth and breadth of the work that we do and the impact it can have on a human being. It's big.
It really is. And it's such an honor to get to do the work that we do. And I think that's anytime I go back and speak at universities, it's the part that I try to impart, and I don't know that I do the best job, but is to say that this is not about math. Like, yes, there is math in what we do, but it's not about the numbers. It's about, it really is about helping people. This is a helping profession. And I think it's the part that I think we're still sort of shedding the old guard and sort of shedding much of our past of the industry, but to become sort of the helping profession that we really are and can be. But, it's hard work. I mean, it's a lot easier just to draw up a retirement projection and throw some numbers at it and be done. I mean, this is a lot harder and a lot more time intensive and emotionally intensive for both the planner and the client.
It is. You can just ask my coaching clients. I think I drive them crazy because it is harder. But the beauty of what we bring is that we are not money coaches, and we are not just, I'm just going to say this, we are not just money therapists. I don't mean just. We are not money therapists unless we've been trained to be that. And we are not just money coaches, because we do have the ability to do something about it with our clients. And the numbers do matter. That is what we are as financial planners. That is unique. That's not what a therapist does. That's not what a money coach does. Nobody can do that but us. And so I'm very proud of that we have that ability to bring both the humanistic and the actual number advisement and bring it beautifully together. And it is, as you say, it is a whole lot more work. And part of the reason it's so hard, one of this commercial drives me crazy, and I don't know if they're running it anymore, but it gives an example, I think, of why we get so frustrated and why we feel like nobody understands nobody understands us. Do you remember the commercial? I think it was, I'm going to name the name because they don't call themselves this anymore, but I guess it was IFG. And they had a commercial where everybody was running around with these big signs that had a number on it.
Yep.
And it was their number.
Yep. You got to know your number.
Got to know your number. And every time I would see it, my skin would crawl. But it's an example of why people don't understand what we do, because they have been told to think that there is a number and all we do is help them find their number. So, there's a lot working against us in that way, in terms of, I think, that's still that public perception.
Yeah, I think if the public really knew what we do, one, we would have a whole lot more advisors, because we'd have a lot more people interested in this profession, and we'd have a whole lot more clients, because I think consumers would really understand the value. But so how did you get into this field? I mean, has financial planning been your entire career? Because you said, in the second half of your career. So just walk me through sort of your path to where you are today.
I'm trying to decide how early to start. This was not what I expected to do for a living. I started I was a meditation teacher, and I still practice, and that's still a part of my life. But I was a journalist major and communications major, and worked as a journalist for a while. And so it was those sort of odd turns of events that I kind of found my way. I was either the first or second female stockbroker in Atlanta in the 80s, and that was not a pleasant, I can't say that was a pleasant experience.
I'm sure.
But it was, it was baptism by fire. And I sort of think I knew early on that there must be a way to work with people and their money that brought meaning and soul into it, that honored them. And I built my business by doing public speaking, and I actually met every one of my clients. And in those days, that was pretty unusual. It was all phone, dialing for dollars, and I didn't do that then, and I've obviously never done it since. And I still remember this day when I met the first certified financial planner I'd ever met, and I went, oh my God, there is something. There really is something. I didn't make this up, and I didn't dream it. There is something. And anyway, I ended up moving to New York City and doing self-study and getting the CFP after being in the brokerage business for a number of years, where I was really miserable. But I was pretty good at it. I sort of liked that idea of combining money and relationship with people. So that was sort of the beginning of the journey. I have had I've worked with every type of firm. I have been with a regional brokerage firm. Several regional brokerage firms. I've been with a head of financial planning for a national fee-only firm. Had my own firm, merged with another firm. Been on retainer model. I did hourly money coaching many, many years ago. There's not many models I haven't worked in over the years. And so, but I like so many, I ultimately found my tribe a bit later in life, probably than hopefully most people do, but probably at 30, 39 or so, 38, getting really involved in the professional association and finding my tribe and my voice, and that built confidence and conviction. And so really the last 20 years have been just exceptionally fun.
It's always fun for me to talk to the folks that, like I worked with Rick Kaler, and to talk to folks like him and to you that honestly were around trying to do real financial planning before you knew that real financial planning was a thing. And I remember Rick telling me sort of the same thing. He met a CFP and was like, oh my gosh, I thought I created comprehensive financial planning. Come find out there's a whole association just for that.
Yeah, I went through the same thing. I had built out this whole model, and I thought, I am so brilliant, except nobody's going to ever want me to do this for them, and how would I get paid, and the whole thing. And then, yes, discovered, and of course, Rick and I were part of this wonderful group that started right at the beginning of the 2000s, the Pioneers. A group of us had attended one of George Kinder's early two-day money, 7 stages of money maturity things, and decided we wanted to go to his 6-day. And this little group, we really went on a deep journey together for several years, and included Dick Wagner and Rick and a bunch of other folks, that it changed, I think, all of our lives and sort of sent us on a trajectory different for each of us. We never really created anything together, but I do think it sort of helped shape what came next. I like to think that it contributed to it anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, it really laid the foundation for where the profession is and where it's headed. I think it was one of many steps, but a very critical step. And again, just sort of recognizing what the profession can be. Now, the Pioneers, is that the same group that became the Nazarudin Project, or was that different?
It's different. It actually sort of emerged out of Nasrudin. I think it was the first time I think George Kinder had offered his 2-day workshop as a kind of a pre-conference to the little Nasrudin. And so this little group formed. We were all sort of involved in Nasrudin, but this became not so much it was sort of a study group, a think tank, and a money group therapy. I don't know what we were, and people who love to eat and drink well. So yeah, it was all of those things. But yeah, I want to go back to something you said, if you don't mind, Alan, because it really struck me when we were kind of talking about why this is so hard, and that if people really understood what we did. And one of the things I've observed, and you might be planning to get to this, but because I love spending a lot of time with new planners, whether they're young or career changers or both or whatever. And it is hard to get education in how to do financial planning. And so as you mentioned, that is sort of my sweet spot of really what does it look like to do this? And I don't know how we fill that gap. It has to be, I mean, you can take this specialized training and this specialized training, but there is this awkward gap. And I certainly think, our conferences can add to it. Being in a study group can add to it. But it's difficult to grow your own confidence and conviction if you don't feel like you're actually demonstrating and know what to do when you do financial planning. So
it's a great point. And I truly believe I cheated, and I cheated by going to work with Rick because I got to see it from very early on. I didn't know any better. I just thought that was how everyone operated, was from this place of really just recognizing the emotional side of money. And I think that's I think that's one big piece. But planners ask me all the time. They're like, the CFP, this is great. It's the science of financial planning, but like, how do I learn the art? How do I learn how to talk to clients? And what's the certification or the designation or the training? And it's like, the answer is go work with a bunch of clients and hope you figure it out, which is really sad, but like, that is the answer right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I know that's what we're sort of hoping, not just this survey course, but that begins to bring a lot of pieces together. I think we've got a few good books, Rick's work, Roy DiLiberto's, and one of these days I will write my book, The Art and Science of Financial Planning. I've started it 5 times and keep working on it, but, and it is a combination of trial and error. There's real value in that. All of us went through it. We learn the most from our clients. But it's also painful, and having leadership and guidance and some idea of here's a framework, or here's the order of meetings, and here's how to have a great meeting. To have to work all of that out yourself is traumatic, and it's not necessarily great for the profession or for the individual planner trying to build a practice and do good work for their clients.
Well, if you look at, the world of therapy, for instance, therapists are trained that, most states require basically 3 years monitored hours with clients before you're allowed to go out and actually do individual work with clients. And, you literally have your classmates and your professors and your practicum teachers watching you operate. And just imagine how different financial planning would be if we took, FPA residency, for instance, and instead of it being a week-long intensive training, it was 3 years of FPA residency. That's the difference in training for advisors versus therapists. And it's interesting to me that we have so far, categorically rejected the concept of that level of training.
Right. I mean, being required to have any experience to get your CFP, that might be fine to get your CFP designation, but you're bringing up a really important point that gets talked about all the time, and we're seeing some firms, Yeski Bowie does it, I'm not sure if Rick does, but a number of firms are starting to have residents, right, who get a 3-year position. I think that's a great idea, and I actually would love to see as the profession evolves that there becomes some sort of a peer-to-peer process, or what you're talking about. I don't think it can happen yet because, again, I don't think we have enough coherence as to what is financial planning.
Right.
It's so hard. But we're so young, and one of the things that's been kind of interesting studying adult learning is that we're not alone in that. There are other fields that are struggling with, how do people understand what we do and the value of what we do, and how do we communicate it? And we are both blessed and burdened by our odd past. You may have heard me say before, I kind of, when people say, where did financial planning come from? well, we're the love child of the insurance and investment
Right.
world. They're our parents. And we need to leave home. We need to really leave home. And they taught us a lot of good things, and we're still leaving home. It's almost like we're still in the adolescent phase as a profession. That's okay. I think it feels to me that something fairly significant, one of those big shifts, is in the process of trying to occur.
Yeah, it reminds me sort of on the flip side of, medicine, where they've gotten so good at teaching doctors how to diagnose, and yet what they've learned is just how important bedside manner is. And like they forgot to teach that part. They just taught all the nuts and bolts and again the science of medicine. And now they're going back and incorporating the art of communication, and really where planning is now. Obviously, medicine is a much older profession than we are. So to your point, we're very much in our adolescence, but it is frustrating at times, but also exciting to see where we are and just where we've come from in a short amount of time. I mean,
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can talk to Rick or to me. I mean, we've sort of lived through the whole unfoldment. I wasn't there at the table of 12 in the 70s, but, pretty much from the 80s on. And it's really pretty phenomenal. I mean, it really is. The fact that we have PhD programs in financial planning, we are finally getting research done, that we are attracting brilliant young people into this field, that's really cool. I don't even think I imagined all of that.
So what do you tell younger advisors or newer advisors, I should say, to the profession? They get their CFP and they say, now, how do I learn real financial planning? There are 6 to 10 of these 3-year residency programs spread around the country. So there's some opportunities, but, how do you learn if you can't find one of those opportunities? How do you figure this out without just, diving in and working with clients and hoping you figure it out one day?
Yeah, and it's this sounds like a easy way out, but there isn't one size fits all. I mean, for some, they're gonna hang out their shingle, and that's a hard way to go straight out of getting your CFP if you haven't had any experience. You're gonna get blistered and a lot of scars, but it might be right for somebody, and then they're going to have to really do hard work to create their community and build their learning. I always tell people, particularly young planners versus career changers, when you come out, if you're going to get a job, you're not looking for your last job, you're looking for your first job. It's a journey, and you're going to learn from, and you know this, I know you know this, Alan, you're going to learn from what worked and what didn't work. And that ability to observe without a lot of the stress of it's going to make or break your career is, I think, pretty important. I think finding your tribes is important, which means, I think, joining the associations, finding communities, whether it's XYPN or that's one, and then there's another. I think the associations are important. I think they play a role. And then if it's mentor, I think, we have good mentorship programs available. I think coaching is incredibly valuable. I would say, you have to take ownership of your learning. Right? There has to be some, this is a community willing to give, but you have to go for it. You have to ask for it. You have to do your search. And I think that's easier actually than it ever has been, right? The internet helps us a lot with that. And know yourself. You're on those first few years, you're on a journey of self-knowledge as much as anything. What kind of clients do I enjoy working with? What I'm beginning to, looking at how different people practice. What are you seeing? What are you learning? What are you reading? What are you drawn to? It doesn't happen overnight, and that's reality, but you're always learning, and you will always, the beauty, the thing I love about this profession, it's evolutionary. The ink is never dry. It will never be dry for any one of us in this profession, or probably for the profession itself, and you just sort of have to accept it. And then I will say this one other thing and let you ask another question, because this is something that, this is a messy kind of work. Would you agree with that? It's messy.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think
it's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is hard for particularly young people coming in and even career changers, they don't want it to be messy, and they sometimes see messiness and think it's not a good firm or that there's something wrong. But anytime you deal with humans and their emotions around money, it's going to get messy because people are not rational, right? People are not consistent. We have a lot of pressures. We have policies that change. We have governments that change. And then we have our individuals who bring surprises. And so the businesses themselves reflect, I think, some of that messiness. And it can be scary. And I have seen, young planners leave a firm that was actually a great firm because they couldn't handle the messiness of it. They thought the messiness meant it wasn't a good firm. And that's not true. It's messy everywhere.
No, it's a great point. And I don't know if this is fair, but I'll somewhat blame just sort of the college education system and really our education system in general, I think prepares us for, if I do A, B, and C, I will win, or I will get an A, or I will get a B if I don't do that, or and whatnot. And that's just not how the real world is. I don't know any job that is really that way. And you're right. Financial planning is this strange mix of money, of numbers and humans, of art and science, of emotion and math. Like it is this messy combination because, honestly, the CFP teaches us exactly what to do whenever a client is perfectly rational. And I don't know about you, but I have never worked with a perfectly rational client.
I have not either. No, and I don't expect to.
With the perfect amount of money to do everything that they want, and they would never ask to do something they can't afford. And I get it. It's hard to teach that in 7 courses. And I have my suspicions that, the CFP board would like to move to more of a master's degree, similar to accounting, where you have to have a master's and 30 more hours of education, which I would not fight personally to really learn this stuff. But it's what makes it fun to me. I can see that there are probably folks that might struggle in that messiness. And if you work at a big firm, you go out and you work for a BAM or a United Capital or something, they're probably so processed out at this point that you could probably find that clean version. But if you really want to be on the front edge and the bleeding edge of what this thing can become, you're going to have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, I guess.
Yeah, and I would suggest none of those firms can. It's sort of like you can't eliminate all forms of risk. I mean, I worked for a very large, very systemized firm, and I wanted to go there because I wanted to understand how systemized can you get to get rid of the mess, and what does it look like to create a national level, truly, holistic financial life planning firm, fee-based or fee only, and you can do it, and you can have beautiful systems, and that helps a great deal, and you get the benefits of scale. But I sat in on meetings all over the country, and they were messy, and so you get to that place where where money meets human. It's going to get messy, and if you try to over systematize it, then you have pulled out the heart. There is no art anymore. And so that's the danger. And I think that's one of the things we are struggling with as a profession is how to build scale and build these firms and not rip the heart out of the engagement with the client.
Yeah, you sort of answered the question, but that when you were talking about going into a bigger firm, I was curious if is it you because you want to have the heart, or is it and you want the heart to lead the relationship and be involved, or is this just the way the profession is and everyone's just going to have to accept it?
No, it makes sense. It's a really interesting question, and I think at this point there isn't consensus, or it would be interesting. You might have most people say, well, of course there's heart in it. I think we're still learning what does that mean? And that might be what gets us back to theory, which we don't need to talk about a whole lot more. But this is why I think everybody should read Dick Wagner's book, because I think he did the best job of anybody I've seen of really deeply thinking about those questions at the philosophical level. And the word he used for us at our best is that we are secular pastors. And there's something really beautiful about that. We're not trying to convert people to any particular religion, but we are walking a path with people through their lives. And if you really cannot do that without heart.
I have to admit, I'm getting goosebumps just listening to you say that, because I think this is what makes our profession so beautiful, and the work that we do so powerful and meaningful. And it's the part that I think is frustrating that we lost, and that we still lose in sort of the product sales side, that we approach it, that it is a transaction. It's hard to have this philosophy of walking with our clients through their lives and being their guide, being there the whole time.
Exactly. And let me say this, because I'm a big fan of, you got to have conviction and you got to stand for what you stand for. And that means sometimes you're firm with your advice and it's, we think you should do this. I always try to tell my clients the difference between, this is my opinion, but the consequences if you choose to do something else are not so great. And this is what is going to happen on this one. I have conviction around this and I'm worried for you if you don't do this. So there are times, but that has heart in it, but it might have been a technical recommendation. And so this is why I say this is not one or the other. This is a woven experience we provide with the client, and why I keep saying, financial planners can do something nobody else can do because we do have technical expertise. It's sort of how we show up with it and how we learn to honor the client's path. And sometimes we cannot help but bring our own biases and judgments. And so, one of the things I remember the pioneers talked about a lot is this idea that you can't take your client farther than you're willing to go yourself in terms of understanding your own relationship with money, because otherwise you're just bringing all your own judgments and biases unconsciously into a meeting. I can give you so many examples, working with clients who are spending too much. And I've had students and young planners, say, well, I just need to tell a client, they just need to cut their vacation budget in half. Well, and I will fire you immediately, right? If you did that to me. But we know the answer. We know, that there's the money I need to fund this goal. There it is. They just need to cut that. And then I have the money I need as the planner to do this thing I think is more important than their vacation. Meanwhile, the client, this is a core value. This might be, I know it's true for our family. Vacation is where we reconnect, where we rediscover each other. It's not just for fun. And so that's one of those things where the technical really isn't separate from this thing we might call financial life planning. It informs decisions and consequences, and I agree with you. That's what makes this hard work and really awesome, cool work. Yeah.
So we will link to Dick Wagner's Financial Planning 3.0. I have not read it yet. I have to admit, I have heard great things about it, and just understand when you read it, from my understanding, again, not having read it, just seeing other folks talking about it, but that it is a very philosophical and deep book. So it is not like an afternoon read.
No, and it's not a how-to, it's not going to teach you how to do anything particularly, but you will be, what I hope for people who read it is that they get that tingle up the spine that says the work I do matters in a way beyond what I ever thought.
So are you still working with clients at this point? Are you associated with an RIA in any way?
No. Michael, my husband, and I had our own firm, Financial Vision Advisors, for years. We ultimately merged with RTD Financial, Roy Diliberto's firm. And so I went with that for a few years, but I was already sort of getting more interested in working on the profession than in it. And so I retired from the practice a few years ago to really focus on, speaking, writing, teaching, coaching, being a pain in the butt in the profession, just focusing on being a pain in the ass in the profession, basically. And so that's what I do. And Michael is still a shareholder in the firm, so he's still in the business, but I haven't been for a few years.
Yeah, the professional agitators are my favorite. It's why I love Kitsis. I love talking with you. I love Steve Lokshin, I think, was the one who said like his goal was just to be a professional agitator.
I like that. That's better than pain in the ass, I guess. Professional agitator.
It is interesting. It's similar to a business when you take even just a couple of days to step back and really work on the business. It's amazing the impact you can have on your business, and the profession's the same way. Every voice matters, and we don't have a lot of people working on the profession. And so, being willing to do that is a huge. I think one, it's very powerful and it matters, but it's also trying to think what I'm trying to say. It's impactful and it's appreciated, honestly, because this is what it's going to take.
Well, I appreciate that. And, it's funny because we didn't have that. And I feel like I sound like such an old part, but that is one of the things that you kind of miss out on is that we do all need that. We need a safe place to go to poke the bear and to question things and to try things out. And so any of us, you're creating that space right now with doing these podcasts. I mean, it's just a place where people get to show up and say what they have to say and put forth the questions that they have. And that in itself will evolve the profession. I believe so deeply in the power of meaningful conversation to transform a community and a profession and a couple's relationship with money and all of that stuff. So that was a compliment if you didn't hear it. Oh, good.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And it's funny that, people ask me sometimes if I miss doing financial planning, and just because I sold my practice now, it's been 2 years since I've actually worked with clients. And the truth is I love this profession. I'm not the best financial planner. I think there are hundreds there are over 500 members now of XYPN Network that are better planners than I am. But I do love this side of it more. I love the supporting of advisors and trying to push the profession forward. Like this is more fun for me. And, fortunately there are more and more opportunities now to do that. But, and I actually think it plays into that. Another message I try to share with young people and career changers just getting into financial planning is that, being the lead advisor is not the only career path. And it's sort of what we've been obsessed with. As you come in, you become a paraplanner, an associate advisor, a lead planner, and then you take over the firm. And it's like, yeah, the number of people that actually follow that career path is abysmally low. There's so much that you can do. And it could be some of the work that you're doing, or it could be in operations or compliance or technology. I mean, there's so much in financial planning that even if you don't want to be the lead planner, you can still support the profession in your own way with your own, unique genius.
Yeah, and that's a great sign, because that probably wasn't true even 15 years ago, maybe certainly not 20 years ago. So that's another indicator of maturing, right? I have a grand nephew that scares me to death who is in the master's financial planning program at Georgia. He's not listening to this, but I would say it to his face that I don't know whether he's meant to, be a planner or be back office or what role, but I see the passion and I am confident there'll be a place for him. And I probably wouldn't have thought that 20 years ago necessarily. So I think what you're saying is really true. And, one of the things that's interesting and that I love about doing the work that I'm doing now is helping people sort of find that authentic path. There's lots of, even within holistic, comprehensive financial planning, the way you and I conceive of it, there are so many ways to be in it. I mean, I've got clients who say, you know what, we discover really they should just do foundational financial planning. That is their passion. They don't need to offer complex retirement planning. There's a huge need for foundational financial planning, and it doesn't mean just poor people. And they can make a living, and they can charge good money. And other people are meant to do complex situations with business owners. And so, this finding not only a niche in the sense of, I work with women in tech. The niche may be, I know who I am, and my passion is this, and how I work with clients. And that is also a way to define what you're going to do and how you're going to do it as a niche, I think.
So talk to me about some of the work that you're doing now with advisors. So I guess, one, when did you actually start coaching advisors in a formal manner? I assume you've been a mentor for a very long time, but I guess when did you actually start coaching advisors? Because we've had a couple of your clients. Meg Bartelt was on the show. Brian was on the show just recently as well, and sang your praises. So when did that sort of side of your career kick off?
Well, strangely enough, I've actually been coaching since 2007, and I was in my position as director of financial planning at a national firm. That was my job as well, to coach advisors. I would say, it was coaching. I would say what I do now is a combination of coaching and consulting. And I guess the difference is, I think when people think of coaching, they think of more sort of supporting the individual, accountability, I don't know, sort of that kind of emotional individual support. And consulting getting more into really, what are you doing? And I get a lot into what are you doing?
Yeah,
and so
it's probably impossible for you to stay out of that area.
Well, it is, and it's kind of what we talked about before. There's such a need for it. And so I am very willing to share everything I've pretty much ever done or designed or created, if it's useful, to walk people sort of through, their process. And yes, there's accountability and setting some goals and all of that, but there's also, we get in the business and here we are. And there's almost no way other than to just start doing it. And after about 6 months to a year, it's an appropriate time, I think, to go ahead and now step back and say, what's the purpose here? What business do I want to be in? Who am I? I have enough information now. Who should I be working with? What's my philosophy? Let's start to design something intentional. Before that, it's just too early, right? You kind of do have to just go prototype and play at it and do the best you can, whatever environment you're in. And after, I think, about a year even, you've got enough to begin to, it's time to start bringing intention into it. And so I would say that's sort of what I do. And I've worked with clients who are owners of very large firms, and I've worked with a lot of clients who are at that point of a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years into their business. I've worked with associates at firms, and so kind of run the gamut.
So I like the way you split sort of the coaching and consulting, because when we say, business coaching, it really is about accountability, running the business, staying on top of things that you're committed to staying on top of, that sort of thing. But the consulting is really where you dig in on, the actual process of how are you doing the financial planning. And I remember seeing on your website at one point that, you'll even sit in on client meetings with an advisor. So is that I guess if I'm a new client of yours and I come in and say, Elizabeth, I've been in business 2 years. I'm hitting some of these scale roadblocks. I'm busy, but I'm not making enough money and I'm not loving what I'm doing, or I think I can do better. What do you do with that? What would you do with me? Is it going to take a month, a year, 10 years? And what is the process to help an advisor sort of take that next step?
Yeah, so I'm not one that requires a contract. I make a recommendation. I think some change is incremental and some is puckle, right? It happens dramatically and quickly, and so I think anyone who goes into it should expect to be engaged at least for a year, because you're doing this while you're trying to do work, and so it is a journey and it's not particularly linear. And one of the things I will say about it is one of the things I'm trying to do by how I do what I do as a coach and consultant is to model things that the client can use in their practice. Because there's a lot in that model of coaching and consulting that is directly applicable to how good financial planning should be done. And so in the process of going through it, they're getting very practical things they can use or observing themselves in this relationship that have complete coherence and apply to what they want to do with their clients. Does that make sense?
It does. It's tough that, coaching like financial planning is sort of this intangible, fuzzy thing. But I've never heard anybody say like, oh, I have this business coach and it sucks. Once you have a good coach and you have a good rapport, that coach like, this was game changing, for my business, and I'm providing so much more value now and that sort of thing. So it's sort of that, don't know what it is, can't really define it until you see it. But when you see it, it is how coaching feels at times.
Well, but yes. And beyond that, it's literally like, okay, what did I send them to talk about what I do? Oh, I should send something like that to my clients about what I do. Oh, she sent me follow-up notes. Maybe I should send follow-up notes to my clients. So it's very tangible. It gets very tangible and concrete, hopefully, and it's not, it doesn't necessarily resonate with everybody, but I all of those questions come all at the same time from anybody in this business, right? Because we've got our business questions. How do I get paid? How should I charge? How much should I charge? What should my structure be? All of those kind of things. Then we have our client questions of what is my process? Who do I serve? And all of those are hitting a planner at once. And so they show up with all of it. I always start with purpose, right? A conversation about, why are you in this business? And kind of those sorts of questions of if it were going great, what would be the difference that you see? Because we have to connect to our own heart, because you have to have some courage to be in this business. And the French word for courage is coeur, means heart. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lack of conviction in a lot of practitioners. And you can't stand in front of a client and get them to change behavior if you don't have conviction in what you're doing and why you're doing it. So we got to work on that first. It's a waste of time to talk about how you're charging until we are so crystal beautifully clear on purpose and value, right? And then all those other pieces, just like in a financial plan, once we understand what matters to the client, all those pieces start to make sense and we can do something with them, if that makes sense.
It does, and you're sort of taking it one step further than I typically do, and that's where clients will say, like, or advisors will ask me, what's the right fee model, or how do you market to clients, and all of these questions. And it always comes back to, for us, we're very focused on niche, right? So who are you talking to, and then the fee structure and the marketing plan, and all of that sort of fall into place. And you're sort of taking that one step further when it comes to niche, and it's not just who do you serve best necessarily, or who are you the expert on serving and the best at working with, but why are you here? And the niche market, I think it becomes more clear who your ideal client profile is when you can if you're capable of really defining why you're in business and have that conviction to serve a particular client base.
Well, and that takes time, and I would push back on some of your niche philosophies just a little bit, because I don't necessarily think for some planners, it's about, the client is in this field or this age. It can be defined by, this is the work I do. And I don't think they're really getting that. And so that's a discovery process. And, I had 2 coaching calls today, and we worked out compensation on those calls, but I've been working with these people for over 6 months. They had that question at the beginning. I'm probably going to lose clients because saying this, but they weren't ready to have that conversation. We would have had to change it 3 times already because they didn't have conviction. They didn't have those kinds of clarities. And so a lot of times the compensation question is it tells me, as it would tell you, that there's some core things we need to talk about. And that's not the first one, but that'll come. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fair point that we're continuing to try to refine the messaging around niche marketing, or around having a niche, because it's not about selecting from a menu of choices and being like, ooh, I want to serve this type of client. It's much, much deeper than that. And like you said, how you want to operate your practice and the type of services you want to be able to offer are critical, and being able to add in sort of psychometric qualifiers in addition to, what profession or life stage or transition you focus on and that sort of thing. It's holistic. It is a big conversation, and it takes a while to dig at. But once you're there, then again, once you can define that clearly, the compensation question is much easier. And it's less about, I don't know, it's not as broad and as mushy. It's much more tangible.
Well, it is, but it also has to get to what is it you want to do, and we are all very different in the kinds of, not all, but there are categories of planning that can all include financial life planning. But again, like I said, I've got clients who we discover you really just want to do really good foundational financial planning. Let's build it. You are really at your best when you are digging in, doing seriously complex planning. That's when you're at your best. They're going to have completely different business structures and charge potentially very differently for that. And that has to do with who they are as much as who their clients are. And that's so exciting, right? And that's where people find their conviction when there are a lot of, this is true probably in most professions, there's a lot of shoulds. I should do comprehensive planning. I should offer it. I should work with the high end. I should make this much money. I should charge this way. I should have a niche. I should. And that will kill you. That will kill you as a practitioner early on. It will just suck the hope and the heart out of you. And so it makes it not fun, and you're frozen. It's paralyzing. And so I guess, a lot of what this work is sort of getting past those things that paralyze us so that we can do the work we want to do. And then again, understanding that you're always prototyping. Like I said, I don't think the ink is ever dry. So and your clients are your best teachers. And so a lot of what I do with my coaching clients is have them tell me client stories. I can learn more about how they should market and what their niche is and who they are from telling me an actual client story. There's gold in those stories. If I ask you to tell me what business are you in and what do you do, I get a very stiff, uninteresting, lifeless story. And most websites, that's the story they tell. If I ask you to tell me about the last client you met with and what did they have to say at the end of the meeting, I get this vivid, beautiful, wonderful language, clear value, right? That's just out of that, we can build a whole practice.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, again, sometimes we try to simplify things, right, and make it a little more tangible. Because even when I talk to advisors that have established firms, like, I should be working with young people. I'm like, no. I say, like, don't should on yourself. There's not a should. This is a if you want to. This is entirely different. And when you really dig into advisory firms, and probably particularly advisory firms like your clients, from firm to firm, they're vastly different. They're not cookie cutters. They are totally different, and there's no way to say I should be doing what all of these planners are doing, because you can't, and you shouldn't. It's really about finding, like you said, your own authentic voice, which is a huge challenge, because I think some of that authentic voice changes over time too. It's not like once you decide, well, I'm going to be here, then you're there for the rest of your career.
Right. And we just want it to be that way, because that just would make it so nice and simple, right? But because we're evolving as humans, right, and going through our own transitions, the work we want to do and the people we want to do it with transitions. But that's what's exciting about it. And you get used to it, right? And that's kind of one of the nice things about over time. Maybe that's what wisdom is, I don't know, but you've kind of been there and seen, not the abyss. I don't want to scare people to death, but you've sort of been through those, I don't know what's next, over and over again. And you begin to recognize that, okay, this is a good sign. This is me evolving, and my clients must be evolving, and I need to just sit with it, or hire a coach again, or get in a study group, or go to a meeting, or have a conversation and check it out, and maybe pull back a little bit and think through it. I think this profession requires us to be reflective and take that kind of time. Like you and I were talking about before you started recording, about our need to, we get overwhelmed, but then we need to pull back and have that sort of reflective time. And I think if you don't do that as a professional in this business, you don't stay relevant, you don't stay excited about it, and you don't stay valuable to your clients.
So you are designing coursework, which for anyone who has not had to do it, it is a lot harder than it sounds. Once you start teaching someone will ask you to teach a course at a university, always ask them if the course is already designed, because it takes a lot of time to design it on the front end. But I know that's a big, project for you right now. What else are you working on? Sort of what's the next 12 to 24 months look like for you and your various sort of areas of focus right now?
Yeah, so it'll be nice to get this course, the first, I'm calling it the maiden voyage, to get the maiden voyage and then reflect on it and refine it. Being in graduate school is going to continue to be sort of a big deal, but I'm hoping that I will get a little bit of bandwidth to start doing some writing, kind of bringing some of these ideas forth, and some of these things that I have been doing in the coaching and lecturing on for years, and just get it back out in the world. My other passion, as some of your folks probably know, is doing training, particularly for women advisors, around how to use the circle process as a means of engaging, educating, and sort of inspiring women. And this is something I'm really passionate about. It's a process called generative dialogue, and it is talking about money can be very isolating, and even the way our offices are set up can be intimidating and frightening to people. They won't ever say that, but it can be. And so through my own experience and my own training of using these different sort of group dialogue structures, I found them to be really powerful ways to help people share their stories and get more empowered and really feel ready to engage with a financial planner and do the work that's going to need to be done. And so I love doing that. I love the experience of it. It doesn't monetize all that well. So I'm hoping to get some academic research going and I'm just going to keep playing in what it means to do financial planning in the 21st century and hanging out.
And as most professors will tell you, academic research does not monetize well either.
That's okay. The nice thing about being at this place in life is it's not all about the monetizing. I would like to monetize some of what I do. And the other part, I will always use Dick Wagner as my inspiration, is that, is to just help shape the future by tending those who are coming along and offer what you can. Just offer what you can. And I have a lot of energy and passion, and I just need to lasso it. And I thought I liked to write, but I actually like to do speaking more than writing. And so that's a challenge for me because I do want to get some things written. So we'll see.
This is why I have a ghostwriter. I hate sitting down and writing, but I love producing content. So
well, that's what I need. I need a ghostwriter.
Yeah. And the podcast, this is the other thing I have found. I'm just not a good writer. And this is an easier way for me to be able to share content and in many ways, just record conversations I'm already having, because you and I could have had the same conversation offline at a conference or whatever. So it's just better to record it and share it with the advisors that are listening.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. And I've loved doing it. And I love that you're doing it. Maybe I'll start my own podcast. That's what I'll do.
I love it. I love it. Just one more thing.
That's right.
So as we're coming to a close, I'll ask you the final question that I ask every guest. And that is, if there's one thing that you wish you had known, one thing you could go back and tell your younger self that you've learned through through your career, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, I think it would be, Elizabeth, you are going to find your tribe and you are going to contribute to this profession. In the early days, in the 80s, being a woman and one of the only women in the financial services was really pretty rough.
I can only imagine.
You really cannot. I'll just say, I don't think you really can. Yeah. And one of the things I remember is that even those people that truly I respected, when they would get up and talk about their achievements, it was from this place they were now, where they've already achieved everything. And they would say, well, tell them, how do you get clients and how are you so successful? But it wasn't anything I could relate to. It was nothing I couldn't do anything like that. And I had no tribe. I had no community. And so I think if I had known where to look or that there was one waiting for me, I would have breathed a little deeper. But I guess my message to others is find your tribe. They are out there, and they will, at least for me, and maybe more so for women. I don't really believe that. I think it's true for everybody. You have to find people you can feel safe with to learn and to grow, and I think that's really important.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for taking the time to come onto the show. This was super fun to learn more about what you've been working on and where your focus is. I'm really excited to see some of the academic work, especially that you're going to be pushing forward, because I think that's going to make a huge impact.
Thank you, Alan. It's been great fun talking with you, and I appreciate all you all have done in the world of financial planning.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.